Police in Minnesota have arrested the suspect allegedly behind the shootings of 2 U.S. lawmakers. Minnesota Governor Tim Walz says the U.S. cannot become numb to this kind of violence.
A moment in this country where we watched violence erupt. This cannot be the norm. It cannot be the way that we deal with our political differences.
State Representative Melissa Hortman and her husband were killed early Saturday morning. Democratic Senator John Hoffman and his wife also shot in their home. They are expected to recover. These latest attacks follow a series of political violence in the U.S. against a backdrop of sweeping protests and anger towards the U.S. administration. For a closer look at the political landscape south of the border, I'm joined this morning by Eric Ham, CTV News political analyst, and he is in Washington. Eric, good morning.
Good morning. It's good to be with you.
First of all, let's talk about the suspect who is now under arrest, his motivations following this arrest. What have police learned?
Well, there's the alleged kill list that he had that featured a number of other Democratic state lawmakers in Minnesota. And of course, we know that when his vehicle was recovered, there were apparently 3 AK-47s in there. And also law enforcement believes that had they not proactively implemented this manhunt, the statewide manhunt for him, they believe more deaths would have actually ensued, those of actual elected officials throughout the state of Minnesota.
You know, I remember commentators in the U.S. talking after the assassination attempt against President Trump, talking about how this can't be the way that we deal with political differences in the United States. But they are happening more frequently, from that assassination attempt, multiple, on President Trump, to an arson attack on Pennsylvania Governor Shapiro's home. According to United States Capitol Police, for the second year in a row now, violent threats against lawmakers hit a record high in 2024. More than almost 9,500 threats. So when did this shift towards violence become part of the political landscape?
You know, I do believe a lot of it began with Donald Trump and his MAGA movement. And this is not to sound or appear partisan, but we have heard Donald Trump, at least when he came down that gilded escalator back in 2015, speak in very violent, very truculent terms about his political opponents, his perceived political enemies, and how to address and deal with the political resistance that he had received either as a candidate or as an elected official. We have seen him actually endorse the idea of kidnapping elected officials, as we saw with the governor of Michigan, Gretchen Whitmer. And of course, we have seen him actually say that he would pay for the legal expenses for people who actually incited violence against his political opponents. And so I think what you're seeing now is a landscape that has been actually created as a result of what is now the new normal in the United States in terms of how political retribution and also political challenges are actually confronted.
You know, this has to be a troubling time for people in America. You know, 60 years ago, we saw what happened when there was political differences and then violence ensued across the country. Now, just this weekend, we saw thousands of No King demonstrations held across the U.S. that are protesting Trump's policies while the president was celebrating his birthday and the 250th anniversary of the Army. So, Eric, I'm curious, what does this say about the deepening division within the U.S. right now and the feelings of where the boundary has moved to?
You know, there were a lot of people who, you know, being at the military parade over the weekend, you saw a lot of signs, and some of the signs actually spoke to the actual humanity of people. And what we are seeing from this administration, if you just take their immigration crackdown and the way we're told that some of the people who are being arrested by immigration officials are being treated. And what we're seeing is just a lack of humanity. And so I think that also is contributing to this rise in violence, because not only are political opponents or people who the president or his party deems as less than or other, they are being treated in very violent ways. And so I think that is only continuing to coarsen not only our discourse, but also how we see and view people on the other side. And I think it's actually leading to more violence. And actually, what's happening is the question becomes, how does it stop? And very much like school shootings in the United States, where people are becoming increasingly numb to, that's also beginning to shape the politics of the United States as well.
You know, you and I are using sanitized language. We talk about political violence, but these are politically motivated murders that are happening in the United States. There's been a lot of backlash towards Trump's recent policies. This is from the ICE raids to withholding funding from Ivy League schools. I'm curious about what steps are in motion from the Democratic Party to counter these, protests aside.
You know, that's a really good question. We have not seen much in terms of how people are pushing back, at least elected officials. In fact, even if you look at what's taking place at the state level, and I think this is why, again, you're seeing so much pushback on the president, is because the president has used tremendous overreach, particularly with National Guard and military personnel, to usurp authority and powers from state officials like we see with the governor in California. And so now the president is continuing to use his authority, his power, as in a way where you're now seeing regular people pushing back, suggesting that he is not a king. But in terms of how lawmakers themselves are becoming a more credible opposition party, I think we're seeing at least the Democratic Party that is still struggling and trying to find a way to effectively combat what they believe is tremendous overreach by this president.
Eric Ham, CTV News political analyst. Thanks for your time on a Monday morning. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
If you like that video, make sure to subscribe to the Your Morning YouTube feed, where you can find all kinds of new content posted every weekday morning.